I was walking down the path along the river toward home. This was usually my favorite walk, but today, as I had looked down at my phone at some pictures my friend sent me of her and her family on the beach in Thailand, and I thought of my other friends who had left our community in China, where I was living at the time, to have a break over the Chinese New Year holiday. They were also off in Thailand or other places, and some of them had even gone to Chinese villages to experience the culture of the festivities with a local family. But I was at home. I was stuck in the city, and to me, that was the worst place to be during Chinese New Year. There were weeks and weeks of fireworks, and while it was fun for a while and some of the shows were really pretty, it got pretty tiring after several days and then weeks of the noise of hours and hours of fireworks. If you're new here, I'm Charity Lee Jennings, an artist living abroad. I want to help you see the world through artists' eyes. Through creating art, I share the wonder I feel for the people and places I visit, and I tell the stories. Welcome to Art by Charity. It was unusual to see a parent around my age sitting in the park with her kids. Usually it was the grandparents out with the grandchildren, and the parents were off busy at work. So it was a nice chance to get to talk to her, and she asked me about my family, and then she invited us to join her family for a fireworks show that night in front of their house. And I thought, wow, here's a chance to connect to the culture. She had kids, so it was a chance for my kids to connect with her kids, and maybe we could even develop a friendship into the future. I imagine us going over to their place, sitting around their living room, talking, getting to know each other, finding our commonalities. And I'd worked really hard at my Mandarin Chinese, so I was excited that my language had improved to the point where I could develop a friendship. So I walked home, told my family, and everyone was excited about the plan. As evening approached, we went outside and bought our fireworks. There were little pop-up tents at every corner that sold fireworks, and we got our little bag of sparklers and some other ones you could put on the ground that would pop up, and we headed over just across the road down a short, narrow kind of side street, and then found their house at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was so close to our house. But we were so surprised when we got there to see crowds of people outside, and the whole cul-de-sac was filled with people. I saw the host from across the crowd opening her front door and coming out, carrying bundles of fireworks. And at the end of the cul-de-sac, there were these huge boxes, like piles of boxes of fireworks. And it was just nothing like anything I'd seen in China before. Looking behind the woman as she was opening the door, I could see this huge gold chandelier behind her, and I just thought, who are these people? I have nowhere in my framework that they fit in. They're so unlike anyone else we've ever met in China, especially as she came over and introduced us to her European nanny for her kids. That was just unheard of in my experiences in China. So I just started wondering, who are these people? And also realized my idea of us sitting around the living room getting to know each other was not happening. This was a big get-together on a scale I never could have imagined. So we kind of looked at each other, Brian and I and the kids, and we thought, let's make the best of this. Maybe we're not going to get to know them that well, but this is a pretty fun event to be a part of. So the lady handed us some sparklers, and I like sparklers, so I thought this is pretty fun, waving them around and making the designs. But then I saw her young son in the middle of the crowd, and he was about maybe 5 years old, and he's holding this Roman candle. And if you don't know what a Roman candle is, picture a long tube, a long narrow tube with little explosives shooting out the end of it. And I just thought, I hope no one lights that for him. Like, there are so many people milling around. He's in the middle of the crowd, and I don't want to see that at all. So as the party was getting started and people were playing with the sparklers, the crowd was moving around and expanding a bit, and I noticed my oldest son, Malachi, who was about 11 at the time, was kind of getting swallowed up by the crowd. The rest of us were staying on the edge, but he was starting to become a part of the crowd. And at the same time, I noticed the mom was walking toward her son, who's holding the Roman candle, and I'm thinking, I hope she's going to take that away from him. But no, this short lady, only about 5 feet tall, in heels, is bending over to her son and helping him light the Roman candle while he's standing in the middle of a crowd of people. And Brian and I just looked at each other thinking, this can't happen. So we were pulling our kids back to the side, thinking like, let's just give this some distance. Let's not be too close to this. And our son Malachi was still in the crowd. So we start calling him, Malachi, Malachi, come on over here. But it was just getting way too loud and he couldn't hear us at all. And then the mom actually lit the Roman candle and the little boy starts firing it. He's just walking around, like not really paying attention at all to where he's walking or who's around there, just in total amazement at these little shells firing out the end. And I'm like just in shock that this was happening. So we're calling to Malachi and he can't hear us. And then finally, Brian yells really loud and gets Malachi's attention. And Malachi nods and he looks over at the big pile of boxes. And some of the men were preparing to light one of those off. So Malachi stepped away from the boxes, which were quite a ways away, and were not being lit yet. And as he did, he stepped right into the line of the Roman candle. And I'm watching, and I can see this shell flying out of the Roman candle directly toward my son. And my son has just stepped into the line of fire. And the height it was at, I'm thinking, it's going to hit his eye. And there was nothing I could do. I was just glued to my spot. There were people in between. There was absolutely nothing I could do. And I'm just thinking, when I woke up this morning, I didn't even know these people. I was just walking along the park, trying to come to terms with being in the city when everyone else was off having fun. And I met these people who I'd never seen before, and they invited us to their party. And now, here we are in a setting totally different than what I'd imagined, with a little boy firing a Roman candle right at my son. I just could not believe it. And I just watched in horror as this shell comes flying closer and closer and closer, looking like it's going to go right to my son's eye. And I watch as it flies past his face right at the level of his eye. And oh, the relief we felt. Brian grabbed Malachi and pulled him over to us. And Malachi had this look of shock on his face and said, I felt the heat as it flew past. We just could not believe it. So feeling so much relief, we all just pulled away from the crowd and we thought, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we decided, let's go home. So as we see them starting to light the big, huge boxes, we started making our way down the road toward our house. And we walked down this little narrow alley and we can start to see the huge fireworks firing up in the distance, the colorful, beautiful display. We hadn't even had a chance to say goodbye to our host because there was just so much commotion and we did not want to walk back into that again. But we walked down that alley, crossed the road, and there's our building right there. We went up to the 15th floor to our apartment, and we pulled up the couch in front of our long window, our long balcony window. And from there, we had a great view of the city and just watched from a safe distance all the fireworks that were going off all over the city. We were appreciating the culture around us, but we were safe at home. I pulled my kids a little closer that evening, so thankful that Malachi was safe, and still in shock that he'd come so close to an accident that would have changed his life forever. And I realized just how profoundly blessed I am. Thank you. If you enjoyed this story, you might also enjoy watching me paint a pigeon and hearing a bit about our family's adventures to Poland.